Hey, this is Dave from metalepidemic.com. Thank you for checking out our YouTube video. Please feel free to hit the subscribe button below if you like this type of content, and we hope you enjoy the review. What's up guys, Dave here from Metal Epidemic, back with another album review, and for this review Duncan Kyle and I have been checking out the new album from New York four-piece Tombstoner. The band's new album Victims of Vile Torture will be released on July 30th via Redefining Darkness Records. So, this is a debut album from Tombstoner, which is a fucking awesome name for a band.
Such a good name. I can't believe they're the first ones that have come up with that.
Yeah. Fucking awesome. So this band, strangely enough, is actually made up of two sets of brothers. You've got Jesse Quinones on vocals and guitar and his brother Jason on drums. And then Daniel McGill on guitar and his brother Thomas on vocals and bass. Odd, but they formed in March 2019. What's with all these bands starting in 2019 just now? It's fucking weird.
It's a lot of bands that came together. And the reason their albums are all dropping at the same time now, Dave, is because there was a global pandemic last year, which has forced bands to release everything in a corridor so close together. Like, generally, this is probably an album that would have dropped in 2020, and I get the feeling that pandemics have pushed a lot of bands into this year, which is why there's so much fucking music this year to listen to. If I was a betting man, Dave.
Right. I didn't go to the house, see, I didn't even know that was going on out there. Fucking
global pandemic, Dave.
Fuck's sake, man. I should really watch the news. Anyway, they put out a debut EP, Descent in Madness, in 2020, and now they're back with their first full-length release. The album was recorded by Tombstoner and then mixed and mastered by Bobby Torres at Frightbox Recording in Clifton, New Jersey. If there was ever an album to set you up for the day and get your blood pumping, then I reckon it might be the new Tombstoner album.
Oh yeah.
This is just no fucking around.
Angry.
Full throttle. Yes, right from the start. Just fucking foot to the floor. Let's do this. What I really enjoyed about this was they clearly wear the influences on their sleeve. Like, musically, this is undoubtedly influenced by a lot of 90s bands, particularly death metal bands.
Didn't your nickname,
Nah, you
Dave?
kidding?
Didn't your nickname used to be Hardcore Dave?
It did, yep, it did, that's correct.
I had a feeling that maybe this band acclimates itself to you because of their, dare I say it, hardcore influence.
There is definitely a hardcore influence.
A 90s hardcore influence, Dave, by some chance.
Yes, we have some death metal, we have a little bit of thrash, a little bit of groove metal, and a little bit of hardcore in there as well.
Literally Davey's shopping list.
Yes, it is, absolutely. The main kind of influence or band that kind of cropped up the most for me was Cannibal Corpse. Mm-hmm. There's also a little bit of kind of newish kind of like Power Trip in there, a little bit of Gatecreeper, and more kind of modern bands like Dyscarnate in there as well. Secondly, again, we spoke about another album like this earlier tonight, but really impressed by how seasoned they sound for only being together since 2019. I would not have guessed this was a debut album. Absolutely not. They have a kind of maturity to them that I would have assumed was like this was their second or third album, something like that in their career. And I think for me, what appealed to me most about this album was the variety. I mentioned it before, there's various styles on here, but I'm not even talking about the styles, I'm talking about even just down to the song structures as well. That first track, just as an example, it's the title track. They do not stick to a predictable formula of verse, chorus, bridge, whatever. In that first track, they rattle through 5 different riffs in the first 90 seconds of the track. And then in true kind of like opening track fashion, those riffs are pummelingly heavy. They're very groove laden, very varied in rhythm. But then they cleverly loop those 5 riffs again. So it kind of gives you that feeling of a bit of structure, something that's kind of repeating itself as well. And then it gets to the end of the track, and then they let go with two riffs that you haven't heard that totally just blow your head clean off. So as far as like opening tracks go, I was totally invested. Although the band's sound is quite familiar, I wasn't entirely sure where it was going to go next, because they were clearly not following any particular structure, or there was nothing kind of traditional about this in terms of their kind of song structures. The second track, Sledgehammer, again, it kind of keeps that like almost kind of like Cannibal Corpse, the kind of bass sound, but it's blended up with this kind of like up-tempo thrash, and a kind of almost like a very early Machine Head type, like the More Things Change type era kind of groove to it. But even though like musically it's not anything that hasn't been done before by individual bands, I really like their take on this. It's very addictive, it's really smartly balanced, and it's executed extremely well. I think that the playing is extremely tight. The riffs are really varied, very like bone-crushingly heavy, and then vocally it switches between that kind of like guttural death metal roar and then something a bit more kind of mid-range, almost like a kind of Riley Gale type tone to it. And it was great to hear the bass coming through, like on tracks like what was it called, Breaking Point, where Thomas McGill, he's kind of working his way up the neck, adding something a little bit more elaborate. So many bands these days don't use the bass to its full potential, so it was good to hear these guys try and incorporate it a little bit more, not just sticking to the root note and it kind of getting lost in the mix. I liked that it was kind of coming out a bit. One of my favourite moments of the album, though, was a track called Frozen in Fear, which kind of starts fairly full on, lots of double kicks and a kind of meaty, kind of death meets thrash kind of riff, with some kind of modern kind of metal tinges kind of fused in. But there's a moment around the kind of 2 minute mark where it goes full blown piss and razors. I mean, so fucking piss and razors, unbelievable. It's a big kind of bendy groove riff. Even has the kind of ominous lead work that they would do in the background as well. It was like just like a tribute to fucking Fields of Disbelief era piss and razors, which, well, we don't need to mention how much I love that band. We've heard it many times before. There was a couple of kind of curveballs on this as well. Armageddon brings in like a kind of string quartet, I suppose, for the last part of the song, which I wasn't really expecting. And it did take the track down a more kind of, almost kind of leaned into a kind of more symphonic kind of route, which they hadn't really experimented with prior on the album. And although it did catch me by surprise, I'm not 100% sure that I understood the kind of reasoning behind it. It felt a little bit, tonally it just felt a little bit off for me. I'm not a big symphonic guy anyway, but so it may just be the style that kind of put me off. But then they do it on Trepidation, the closing track. They bring in the strings again, and it's kind of leaning more on kind of symphonic death metal on this one. But I'm still not 100% convinced on the strings. It just wasn't my thing. But they did, however, pull some really nice pick scrapes out the bag on that last track, which gave it a bit of a kind of Gojira type vibe, which I did enjoy. So for me, like the string parts aside, it's a really enjoyable album. It pays homage to a lot of bands I grew up listening to in the 90s, as you said, Duncan. But I think they also add enough of a kind of current vibe that it didn't become like a complete throwback. Production, I think, was really well suited, in my opinion. I think it kind of balanced the line between the old school and new school. It did remind me of some of the kind of better produced albums of the late 90s, but with some kind of newer techniques kind of thrown in. They know what they want to do, they know how they want to sound. As I said, they wear their influences on their sleeve, but I kind of dig that about it, to be honest. Duncan, what did you think of this?
I mean, the first thing that struck my mind was how much the production reminded me of the More Things Change.
Yeah.
It really, really, really did. And that's not a bad thing. I love the production on that album. So, as soon as it kicked in, I was smiling. I love, vocally, it's like a death metal tone, but with a hardcore aesthetic, if that makes sense. They really nail that, and they nail that well. I mean, this has got grooves for days. I mean, like, just when you think you found the grooviest riff on this album, they do another riff, and you're like, oh, what the fuck are we doing here? I'll double down with you. I'm a mark for symphonic stuff. Like, see, when you start bringing in all that shit, I don't think it adds anything to this album at all, other than distraction. I don't think it works. I don't think it works in either song. And it's a weird choice, to be honest with you. I could understand, like, the only way that works on an album like this is if it's introduced earlier in the album, like maybe on the intro track or like a track of some description, so there's something thematically there that suits it. But it comes far too late in the day on the album, and then it's put so close together in between the tracks that use it, that kind of feels like, well, we had these guys playing string instruments for the day in the studio, so we just thought we'd use them. I don't get that, unless those songs were written much later on, and that's a direction they're maybe experimenting with going with, potentially. I would probably argue with them that, like, I don't think it adds anything to their sound. I actually think, if anything, their sound is really well rounded as is. I'll agree with you. The bass works great.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is the most love given to the bass guitar by someone not named Kyle on one of these recordings, because it's clear. He's doing stuff that isn't just, like you say, the root note. Yeah. And it's interesting to listen to, and it thickens out that sound. Yeah, I love the production on this. I love the songwriting. It's varied. It's really, really varied, and it kept me interested. It doesn't go to in any one direction, whether it's groove, thrash, death, or hardcore. Like, no one song you'd be like, well, that's a death metal song, or that's a hardcore song. It's like they take the best elements and kind of mash them together. And the one thing I'll say about this album is it is interesting to listen to from start to finish every time I've listened to it. Like, there's enough switches, enough change up in tempo, and the guitar work. Vocally, I love the dual vocal stuff. I think the two tones work really, really well together. I mean, this is one of these albums where it's kind of effortless to like. You know what I mean? I'm not having to push myself to try and get something from it. It just worked really organically for me. So yeah, I really like this one.
Yep, nice one. And Kyle,
the dream,
the man
honestly,
with the bass.
The man with the bass, yeah. Well, the bass work on this I did like. Honestly, I think this is one of the best new death metal bands I've heard in a long time.
Ooh,
really?
Nowhere. I love it when he does this. You just never know. You never know. You hand it to him, and it's like bringing him a plate of food and not knowing if he's like, I'm going to bring him a blancmange, but I don't know if he's lactose intolerant. You know what I mean?
I am lactose intolerant.
And he doesn't get gassy, and you're like, oh, he likes it.
I'm going to love it. I'm going to eat it, but I'm going to have a real shitty night afterwards.
Literally.
Yeah, literally. Covered in... Anyway, the bass on this album is amazing. No, it's great. I loved it when they did those little bass fills and stuff, and I went high up the neck. I was like, yes, use the fucking bass. It's the best instrument ever. Dave might disagree, but I fucking love bass, and that's why, because you can do stuff like that and it just comes out of nowhere and surprises everyone and blows them away. I will agree with you two guys that the symphonic orchestral stuff came a bit too late, and I was like, but to be honest, I kind of still enjoyed it because it's just like, oh, all right, cool, let's end the album that way, why not? Fucking why not? And it kind of worked together ish. But I mean, everything up until that point was just fantastic. Like, they brought all the best parts of stuff I love from late 90s bands and just mashed it all together, and it was great. It wasn't just like you said, it wasn't here's a hardcore part, here's a death metal part, here's a new metal part or whatever. It's like all we interwoven together, and that's what I like. That's what bands should be doing when they mix genres. They can't just put one on top of the other. They need to, interlock them like this. I don't know. Hard to describe, you know what I mean?
Audio format, no one can see you interlocking your fingers.
Exactly.
Kyle interlocked his fingers. Awkwardly.
I was holding my own hands. It was the most human contact I've had in a long time. Being a bassist, we're used to it. Anyway, the production on this was pretty damn good, to be honest. A lot of it's very organic. It's very not... The drums have been touched in timeline and stuff, of course, but fucking I'm starting to be beaten down by this shit because it just keeps happening. except on that Cannibal Corpse album where they didn't do it at all, and it blew me away, and everyone else on the internet that wasn't fucking deaf. So, but they're still, if they hadn't have done that, it would have been like a 5-star album. I'm not kidding. I would have absolutely given it 5 stars because of, but they did, and I'm just like, oh, why do you keep doing that? Just don't time align the drums. Just leave them as they are. Let me hear the drummer.
The drums,
other than that,
the drums are the equivalent to, like, most drums in most bands recorded nowadays are the equivalent of a halfway house for abused children. Touched.
Pretty much.
Touched.
Yes.
Touched, if you know what I mean. So.
Touched and abused.
Like a child visiting Neverland Ranch. Touched.
Yeah, definitely.
Allegedly. I don't even. He's dead, but I don't know if they'll come after us. Allegedly.
Yeah, getting some phone calls.
Dave's getting phone calls. We're not.
Well, yeah, not me. Whatever.
Yeah.
But the riffs on this album, the riffs, they don't stop. They just keep coming. And when you think they've used up their bag of riffs, they're like, no, we've got an entire new bag. It's just like, how do you come up with? And there's a lot of songs on this. Well, I say a lot. There's 9, but there's 9 songs. But that's 9 songs of incredible riffs, and they keep switching it up, and they keep you interested and hooked in every time I've listened to it. It's not a one listen album. This is super good, and I am super looking forward to seeing where they go next. And I want the next album. I'm going to buy a T-shirt. They better fucking tour here, or I'm going to have a riot. Be a one-man riot, because I'm the only death metal fucking fan in my entire neighborhood, I swear. But I'll riot, and they'll know it. So Tombstoner, get your asses over here. Yeah.
Nice.
So what I can sum this. Yeah, Norway. Come to Norway.
And then Glasgow after that. That'd be great.
Or just go to Glasgow. I can hop on a plane.
Glasgow first, then Norway. It saves them travelling back to come. You know what I mean?
I'll just go see him twice. That's fine. I did that with Vader. You know, I went to Poland because I hadn't played in Norway in like 7 years. I went to Poland to see them, and then like 3 months later they played in Norway. I was like, oh, fuck it, see him twice. It was great. So what I'm trying to say is this album's pretty good.
Yeah.
Only one gripe I had was I genuinely thought the second track was the Peter Gabriel cover. I wanna be your sledgehammer. Why don't you
that would have been amazing.
My name? Ow! But it wasn't. Actually, it was a really good song regardless, so there we are.
Yeah. Okay, so ratings for Victims of Vile Torture by Tombstoner. Yeah, I really like this. Really enjoyable album. An easy listen for me. It's not anything you haven't heard done before by other bands, but they do it really well. My only issue was with the strings that they added. It just didn't really work for me. It felt, as Duncan said, it came a little late in the album as well. But I'm not a big kind of symphonic type guy, so that's maybe just my taste. For me, I'm going to go 4 out of 5 on this one from Tombstoner. Duncan, what are you thinking?
The beginning of this recording session of the multitude of albums we've done tonight, me and you were desperate. We call you Disparate Dave and Disparate Duncan.
Yes.
But the last couple of reviews, we are on motherfucking point. 4 for this. I thought this was great. Yeah, this is another one that I'll come back to several times this year. Great on the treadmill. Great on the treadmill. That's all I'm saying. Shove this on, full pelt, headphones in, on the treadmill, getting all sweaty. Love it.
That's my tagline for this review. Great on the treadmill. Kyle, what about yourself?
I'm going to come in slightly above you guys at 4.5 out of 5.
Ooh, nice.
Really love it.
Sexy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I like it, Kyle. I like it. 4.5 from Kyle. This one drops on the 30th of July on Redefining Darkness Records. If you want to check these guys out, which you really should, on Facebook, facebook.com/Tombstoner Band. I'll put a link below to their Facebook and to their Bandcamp page so you can check out this album when it drops on the 30th. That is the review. Thank you for checking it out. Much appreciated. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.